Good morning. Today we are joined with Claudia Tordini, who has a beautiful accent that with Apanage Group, and I really look forward to talking with you today. Claudia, I would love to say your name as elegantly as you do. Please feel free to share a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you, Meredith. Well, I'm an inheritance coach, and over the arc of the last 6 to 7 years, actually more, almost 10 now, I've been slowly building a practice into the space of wealth and well-being, with inheritance being one of, the intersections. My background is in human behavior and organizations. And then I expanded that with a lot of the psychological theories and background that leads into coaching practices. My specialty is to work at intersections. And well-being is such a grounded and rounded concept that involves the whole person and their space, their community, their habitat, that allows for infinite intersections, including wealth and inheritance.
Thank you for that. It does absolutely intersect with everything. That's certainly something I see in my work as well. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got started? I know you just shared your background, but what was the kind of turning point, or what catalyzed your work in this area?
So I was doing a master's at Penn on organizational dynamics and coaching, and I met Richard Franklin. He's a trust and estate lawyer, and we started talking about, on my side, trying to understand his work, because I'm from Argentina, where we have the civil law. So the law is absolutely different. Parents cannot disinherit their children. You have a forced, inheritance.
Oh.
It was all novelty for me, the inheritance planning here. And that's how, the conversation and baking in all the, research, the psychological theories, the human-centered approach to, human development slowly grew into, I got so curious, and I saw there's so much potential to really have positive impact on people if we, use the research, the true research, and, we make this a more, not so anecdotal, practice, but more of a scientific, practice. And I loved it. And so here I am.
So can you tell me a little bit more about how the scientific research that you know about informs your process and how you work with clients?
Yeah. So at the core of the work is well-being theory. Well-being theory is, for many, is maybe relatively new, but it's not so. And in a way, it acts with a lot of anecdotal, data that is so popular in this industry. So the work's been on both sides, try to understand what has ruled the industry so far, and not destroy, but look at all of those myths, wealth is capped to 75,000, or some say 100,000, but that there is a cap of income that allows you to be happy. Then above that, you don't need more money to be happy. Yeah. That's not true, and there is research that proves that.
So there's research that proves. So you're saying there's a myth that 75,000, 100,000 in income is enough, and going above that does not lead to more happiness. And you're saying, in fact, the research does say the opposite, which is having more does lead to more happiness and well-being?
Yes, absolutely. It's been research that says 75,000
Yeah.
was the cap, but that research was challenged.
Yep.
And actually, both researchers got together a couple of years ago, and they realized, they re-examined the data, they realized that the 75,000 was biased. And the outcome is that if you have a systemic, problem, like you have depression, or you have a terminal illness, or you have something that sets you really at the lower end of the curve, more money doesn't help you.
Okay.
But for the big majority of people, more money does increase well-being and happiness.
Oh.
So, that's important research that is not really, it is published, you can find it, but it's not particularly stressed or highlighted because, the older versions are still too rooted. The same thing happens with the 3 generations. They say that wealth in the family lasts 3 generations. And the first one creates it, the second one manages, the third one deploys it, and that is not true too. It's based on a research from the 80s that was also using a very, very small sample of, data, and it actually wasn't well, cleaned the data or standardized, but it rooted, because
Right.
the messages feed people's ideas. And the idea is that money ruins people. And so, somehow our mind is biased.
Oh.
I'd rather keep it safe than being open to, nice, positive outlooks. So there's been a lot of research on that space that, we have done. And then there is a vast array of research on well-being that supports, supports the other, paradigm. There's one nice theory developed by Richard Franklin. It was called the Prince Charles effect, and now the King Charles effect, saying that, King Charles waited 74 years to become a king.
Yeah.
His chances to really have an impact are very low.
Right.
Particularly now he got,
Yeah.
cancer diagnosis, and we don't know what is his life expectancy.
Right.
So that's something that we see a lot now when wealthy people get to live to almost 100, definitely 90s and well into their 90s. So the children inherit in their 70s.
Right.
And if you inherit in your 70s, how much is that adding to your well-being?
Right.
How much is that allowing you to make an impact? And so one of the models that we support with all this research is giving over the arc of life. Like if you're going to give money to your children, it's better off in their 30s and 40s. It allows them to do way more than if it comes later in life. Later in life, probably it's going to go to your grandchildren, but not to you. Which it's already okay. It's not bad, but
Yeah.
there is the U-shaped happiness curve. It's also supported by research across, I think it's over 150 countries in the world, where it's proved that happiness peaked at early 20s and then deepens until early 50s and then goes up again. And while it's not totally proved why, that happens, it is known that one of the factors is adjusting to, financial needs.
Yeah.
We know that particularly wealthy children, they are covered until they go to college. They go to these Ivy League colleges. And then after they graduate, are mostly left on their own.
Yeah.
And that's where you're starting a career, you're starting a family, you're probably going to buy a house. So,
Right.
so the financial stress that is added is
Yeah.
enormous. And we support the idea, if you can help with your wealth, why wouldn't you do that, and soften that, curve.
I'm thinking specifically when you say that, I'm thinking specifically about one client of mine I had a conversation with a few months ago, but they were, part of the conversation was that, I mean, they're exploring a lot of different things, but they have two children and they're both college age. And, I live here in the Bay Area, Peninsula, Silicon Valley. The housing is it's really, really expensive. And one of the things we discussed was about how they want to potentially help out their children buy a home because they think, if they don't help them, it's like for the ability for, 20 something, 30 something, there are some that are lucky and do acquire, but like for most, it's quite difficult. So to help them out, they're sort of balancing the like helping, but like, oh gosh, are they helping too much? Because it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so what you're saying just reminds me of that conversation in particular.
Yeah, we, one of the models that we offer and support is, if you're gonna give your children $1 million or your descendants, sometimes it's nephews and nieces, or sometimes it's brothers, and sisters, which is even more, like your brothers are gonna be your age,
right?
If you're gonna give them, say, $1 million at death, just give them 100 grants over the next 10 years, and it's gonna be more impactful for them now and in the next 10 years than whatever in the future. But particularly these younger generations, one of the raising issues is anxiety and depression, and so there's nothing wrong in supporting them. Why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you help with lowering that anxiety? There's tons of opportunities to help. Your children are in a really great money-making career, but they feel, they are not respected. They feel they don't have a life, or they are unhappy with it, Why wouldn't you support 3 months, 6 months of a sabbatical so that they can, you can live that way off their shoulder, give them time to look for another job, make a career change. There's tons of opportunity to help children early in their life. Many times it's a divorce that comes, and creates, as many burdens, but why wouldn't support that? We have examples of that, a client who actually decided to help her daughter, who was mid-career, very successful woman with 2 children. She had an urgency to leave the house where the husband was, and they just helped with the, buying a new house so that she could move right away, and they understood that by talking with us. It hadn't occurred to them,
Oh, wow. Okay.
They say, because they are not retired yet.
Right.
But then they realize, well, we have this money, we're not going to use it, just let's help her now that she needs help.
Right.
Rather than keeping that money.
So what I'm hearing is that a couple of things. One, that the research backs counters the idea that money inevitably leads to potentially, negative outcomes that we don't want. Number 2, that your model is one where supporting sooner rather than an inheritance by giving over time or while one is still alive. I think the one thing that people wonder about in particular, and and I'm sort of hearing this with what you're saying is, and I imagine that age is part of that equation, because you mentioned that example right there with the mid-career person. You know, that person has developed their life and they've, you know, so, which is a very different gift, you know, to help that woman buy a house versus say a 22-year-old. So I'm wondering, how does age play into the model that you have that suggests sooner and more over time?
So, age play, yeah, you know, I agree that giving maybe $1 million to a 25-year-old, you know, child it might be dangerous or not. It depends who the child is, you know. But definitely, you know, we support, for example, children at 35 being their own trustees, you know, so that they can decide what use they make of money at 35. Between, you know, 25 and 35, we support being a co-trustee, you know, so that they learn, but they still have some decision power, but, you know, use that to develop their self-efficacy and, you know, financial efficacy and so on. And we recommend that, you know, between 21 and 25 to start getting access to if they have a trust, to the trust, you know, financials and all the information and investments. And then between 25 and 35, be co-trustees so that they can learn, but also they have decision, you know, power.
So that sounds like a little bit of like a transition over time.
Yes.
So the co-trustees working together with ultimately the independence at the end. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes. Yeah. Mostly because they do need to develop a certain financial, you know, efficacy, right? And it depends on who the children are, what they studied. Some of them probably went into finance or into business, you know.
Right.
But still, there is a life maturity that, you know, will progress. So having a co-trustee is good for them.
Can you share any, without revealing any personal identifying information, can you share any examples of families with whom you've worked and like how they came to you, and, you know, what the outcomes were?
Yeah. So I have, if you know, a lot of the clients come from when they start doing their trust and estate planning, and you know, it's a wide array of, there are parents who are already retired, and then there are younger parents, and some other come because they have some concerns like the ones you are talking about. You know, one typical example is when there is a child that is trying to follow like a non-money making career, like arts or sports or, you know, things like that. And because we do support that, we do have a positive outlook on that, you know. But also, when we talk about well-being, and when we talk about using wealth to support your children's well-being, we are talking about the whole well-being. Well-being it's multidimensional, and one of the domains, for example, is career, you know, success, or at least achievement, and financial, you know, well-being. And so we are talking about not just supporting what they want to do because they want to do it, but really support it because it is their purpose in life, you know, and it is the best use of their strengths and qualities and skills. So it's more than just, oh, well, your child wants to study art, just let them study art, but understand a little bit more what's supporting that in the child, so, we are, I'm happy. That's something that I like to do a lot, like, show a positive outlook on parents.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we say life is a long game.
Yes. Yes.
Worrying so much about your child in college time, it's a bit misleading,
What do you mean misleading?
That sometimes children mature a bit later.
Oh, I see. In terms of like college and graduation from college, and people hit that level of maturity differently, not just because it's a college graduation date. Is that what you're saying? Excuse me.
Yes, exactly. And it is common now to see that, there's more and more young children, young adults who they don't know exactly what they want to do.
Right. Right.
And supporting them in that search, it's important too.
So have you worked with a family who had a child who wanted to go and pursue the arts, and the family had the financial foundation to be able to support that person, but they were reluctant because of the, I would say probably general society desire to like everyone be financially productive, and then you did they have a different perspective after working with you? Is that something that happened? Is that
Yes. So I would say most of the parents, what they have is a lot of concerns.
Mm-hmm.
They say in this case, it's not that they did not allow their daughter to study art.
Mm-hmm.
They were actually supporting her even to study abroad.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the concerns they have, in anticipation to what's going to happen.
Right.
Even because it's happening,
Mm-hmm.
It's in anticipation because the daughter is studying art. Where is that going to lead,
Right.
What is she going to do with her life,
Yes.
So yes, working with the parents in that case to try to shift their thinking, expand the scope of their outlook.
And did they come to you because they were wondering about whether that was a good idea and they wanted some support in making that decision? Was that the catalyst for reaching out to you, or was it something else?
And they reach out to me because I have a particular, a lot of research and work on the art space. So
I see.
Yeah.
So there was a natural affinity to want to talk to you.
Yes, I do use art in many cases to work with people.
Yeah. I would love to get the links to the research that you've referenced in this conversation and include it with when I post this conversation.
Yes, yeah. We have a poster actually. I'm happy to send it to you.
Oh, fantastic.
That we presented at the World Conference in Positive Psychology last year.
Mm-hmm.
That has this model of giving over the arc of life and the research that supports it.
Oh, I would love that. Yeah, that'd be fantastic to include.
Yeah, it's very graphic and very, to the point.
Nice, nice. So as we wrap up, are there any other ideas, thoughts, suggestions, stories that you'd like to share in this, realm that we've been talking about?
There's two things, that I see working with people.
Mm-hmm.
One is parents naturally and obviously love their children. And many times they just need to hear the good story. You know, they just need to hear that, you know, it's okay to want to help your children, that it's okay to love your children, that it's okay, you know. And they just, all they need is just to hear that. They are looking for that. And unfortunately, the industry many times chooses the other side, you know, like the inspiring the fears, you know. But when you inspire the positive, like, they accept it. That said, I do see a difference in, you know, a generational difference. So in the more like retired parents and older generations is sometimes more difficult. But the younger generations, like the mid-career, like the 40s, 50s parents, that are not different generations, they are so much attuned with that. They are more open and, you know, almost like it's natural to them. And that's one of the things. There's a couple I work with that, you know, at the end of the work, they say, well, this is really the way we have raised our children, but this has allowed us to put into words our philosophy. So much that they went and talked to their children about it. It's like, well, now we have the language to talk to our children.
Yeah,
So-
it's interesting how like the words can actually really make a difference to
Yes,
like
yes, exactly. And it's all, you know, about trusting them and giving them autonomy and believing in them and wishing them to have their best possible life, you know. So,
Yeah, I do think fundamentally every parent does want that. How it's executed can be different, but I think at a core, that is the desire of, I mean, most parents, I think.
yes, absolutely, yes. And so, you know, that is more my encouragement, you know, message for not just individuals, but professionals, you know, like there's nothing wrong in believing in your children and in trusting them with wealth, you know, teach them, engage them, you know, everything you can think of, but it's fine. It's totally fine. It's actually positive, you know.
More
It's
than
actually
fine.
More than fine. Yeah, you're going to have a positive impact. Yes.
Right. Versus leaving it later in life when it would have far less of an impact.
Yes, and you know, like putting so many constraints about being, you know, about accessing the, you know, the wealth and or not even informing them, you know, not talking about it.
That's definitely something I encounter with quite a few clients who say to me something along the lines of, I'm pretty sure I'm going to inherit from my family, but I don't really know. My parents have never said anything. It's awkward to bring up because I don't want to feel entitled. So there's just no communication taking place. I've heard that multiple times.
Yes, we call that like silent trust or silent, you know, planning. Yeah.
Silent planning.
Yeah, with like
Right, yes, they do have a plan. That's true, but it's just not communicated.
No, it's not communicating, and unfortunately, many learn about their parent decisions at their death. You know, and sometimes many surprises. You know, expected. You know, surprises. Yes, we hear also a lot of like the parents who, oh, I don't want my children to know that, you know, we have money, but then they take them on luxury vacations or they take them, you know, to luxury places and the best schools and so on. And the thinking that the children do not perceive or know that there is wealth.
Yeah.
It's, you know, a mistake.
Right.
So we definitely recommend talking to their children, you know.
Communication.
Yes, absolutely. Again, it's not knowing that they have wealth that's gonna spoil them.
So much more than that.
Yeah. But you know, I think the children can ask the parents. I think there is room for them for asking. What I would say is why the person is, you know, entertaining that thought, like, oh, I think I'm going to inherit money, but I don't know. I think that's the space to work with the client. Like, okay, it's okay. It's the uncertainty is not nice, but how would that change your life? What is it that you are expecting? You know, because sometimes they can be more specific, like they have a particular issue, like I was saying, a divorce, or it could be, you know, a career change, or it could be an entrepreneurship. I don't know. And so the children could approach the parents from that perspective, like, it would be helpful for me to have money now. Otherwise, what does it change for them to know they are going to inherit? Is it that they're going to work less? Well, that is probably not the way to go talk to their parents. So I think it's children can go and ask their parents, but with a particular, you know, proposal to them. It would be helpful for me for X and Y, you know.
Right. Very specific.
Yeah, so that they're not showing, you know, they're showing a positive intentionality.
Right. It's just like investing, really, in any business, right? If a business owner comes and says, "Can you invest in my business?" but it's just sort of like, "Give me some money," which is very vague.
Right.
If the business owner says, "But I plan on investing it this way, and this is going to be the outcome, and this is how your money will make a difference in terms of being able to grow this business." I mean, I'm thinking at it through a economic business perspective, but it sounds very similar from an individual standpoint. That like, hey, this money can really make a difference because then I'll be able to grow and develop and pursue this, whatever it might be.
Exactly. Instead, you know, if there are other siblings and then there is some concern about the other siblings, you know, set some structure around that, you know.
Right. Yes.
That's going to be a parent's for sure. Yeah.
There are definitely many, as you know, not only are we intertwined, but there's like many factors that go into lots of these decisions.
Yeah. But what I guess my main point there is, the parents are not talking about wealth, and so the children feel some sort of guiltiness or concern, or, you know, about asking. My point is there is an opportunity for the children to address the wealth issue with their parents, but because there isn't a free dialogue, so do it in the of a very thoughtful and, you know, needed space.
Right. And that's where the communication is so critical.
Yeah, and that's where I think the children needs also some sort of support. Like, it's okay to talk about this, you know, how can you get ready for that?
One last question before we tie up. Do you typically have adults, let me rephrase that, non-adults, parents, or do you have children coming to you ever to get support with like how to reach out to a parent with that kind of conversation?
So young children? No.
No,
you're talking about young children.
But yeah.
There are some cases where we have the parents and the adult children. Yes.
Yeah.
Most of the time is with one of them, you know, because there are, unless there is more of like a family meeting formatting,
Yeah.
you know. It's more with one of them.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I very much enjoyed this conversation. I do would love to get that sheet that you referenced in the research. I'm sure that others will be very interested to see that. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for including me. I appreciate that.
All right. I'm going to sign off then.